Hi, it's Ben from My Cycling Coach. I hope you're doing well and that you're having a great day. Just wanted to do a quick video this morning as I got this particular question quite a few times on the MCC page over the weekend. 3-4 guys sent in pretty much exactly the same question, and it was relating to interval training. All of the people who sent this question in had just started getting back into some interval training, or just actually started doing some structured training and riding again after having a bit of time off over Christmas, New Year, and they're now starting to think about actually starting to do a bit more structured training and riding, just maybe looking towards the spring now, and they're all trying to increase their power and fitness. So they were also a little bit limited in time with their training, so they've gone straight into doing some intervals, which is, intervals are a great time efficient way to train. But what they were actually finding, and what their main question was, is they were doing these interval sessions and they may have had sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 intervals planned. But what they were finding is they would get to like interval number 2 or 3 and just find that they were really struggling to then keep going into that next interval and hitting the prescribed power or watts that was prescribed on the program for those intervals during that session. They were also finding that as they were working through those 5, 6, 7, 8 intervals, some of these guys were even saying they were getting to like interval number 3 or 4 and then just having to stop the session and maybe just spin in zone 2 for the rest of the session, because they just could not keep going back into the next interval and sustaining that amount of power. And when I get this sort of question come in, especially from these guys who are maybe just starting getting back into some more structured training, I often ask, what's your sort of recovery time between each interval? Because what I often find is, obviously, we have a bit of a break maybe over Christmas and New Year, and we get back into it, and we can often want to just start straight away doing the toughest and the hardest intervals possible. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing interval training, especially if you are limited with your training time. Obviously, trying to just sit on and do zone 2 for all of your sessions, you're not going to get as fast adaptations and progress as you would if you are doing any sort of structured interval, tempo, threshold, or VO2 max work. So I always ask, what's the recovery time? And what I was finding with all of these guys is that they were saying that they were actually doing their interval, and then let's say that the interval was for 60 seconds, they'd be resting or recovering for 30 seconds, and then going back into doing a 60-second interval. So they were recovering for half the time that they were working at in that interval. And really, to start off with, this recovery period is way too short. Now, there is a time and a place where, later on down the line, maybe getting more towards spring, summer, when you really are trying to refine things and sharpen things a little bit, that you will start to bring in that type of interval session where you will have shorter recovery periods than what you are working for. However, at this time of year, if you're just getting back into those interval training sessions, I would really advise that you try to double the length, or if not even longer, your recovery time between each interval, as this is just going to allow you to really be able to go into each interval that you have prescribed during that session and actually hit that power target or the target watts that you've got prescribed for that session. Interval training is about accumulating time in the specific zone or the focus that you've got for that session. So if it's a tempo zone, threshold zone, or VO2 max zone, the idea of the interval training is actually being able to accumulate or acquire real good quality time in each one of those zones, or the particular zone that you're focusing on in this session. And if you're really just beating yourself up with that short rest period or recovery period between each one all the time, there is highly likely that you're not going to be able to actually perform that quality time in the zone, because the recovery period just isn't long enough. You're not giving that aerobic system enough time to kick back in, shuttle maybe the metabolic waste products out of the muscle, allow a bit of recovery before then going into that next interval. So maybe you're finding the same thing at the minute. Maybe you've gone straight back into training, getting some structured training in, you're doing some interval sessions, but you're really just struggling to perform each interval at the required quality, or you may be struggling just to complete the session completely. So really just have a look at your recovery period, maybe worth just extending it out. Two session examples that I would maybe give is you can do some 2-minute intervals, 2-minute VO2 max intervals. So do a 2-minute interval in the VO2 max zone, recover for 8 minutes in zone 2, and repeat this maybe 5 to 8 times. Maybe start off with 5 intervals of 2 minutes, and then as you progress, maybe over a 4-week period, you can then up that to 8 intervals, as I say, with that 8 minutes recovery between each one. Another one that you can do is 5 minutes in VO2 max zone, and then have 10 minutes recovery in zone 2 between each intervals. And again, you can start off by doing, maybe 3, 4, 5-minute intervals, and then progress this up to 6, 7, or even 8 as you work through over the weeks. So yeah, guys, just wanted to do that. Got a few questions on that this morning or over the weekend on that particular question, interval training. And people just struggling to really perform them at the quality or even complete the session at the minute. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please drop a like on the post. Feel free to follow, share, subscribe, and any comments, as always, would love to hear from you. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your riding and speak soon.